Hello and welcome to Further Together.
Enriching relationships.
Creating a better future. Your friends here, Kudzie and Priscilla.
Thank you guys so much for joining us on yet another episode on Further Together. Last week was amazing. We had a powerful couple that spoke to our lives and ministered to as many people that were getting in touch. And tonight is going to be a good night.
It's going to be a great night. Last week we had Bishop Peter and Prophetess Jenna who took us through their testimony. And it was very powerful. If you are joining us for the first time, we want to take this opportunity to say thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the content that we do share here. And if you can, share with your friends and family. If you can share with friends and family, it will be very much appreciated as well. If you can like and follow our page, it will be, very much appreciated. Secondly, if you are coming here as a regular, we want to say many thank you, because without you, Further Together will not go this further. So we will really appreciate you, and would also encourage you to share with friends and family. We are here every Thursday, 8 p.m. UK time, with a topic or a guest, as we'll be sharing tips and content that will enrich our relationships. Apart from that, we do have a mentorship program that we have. We also have the pre-marriage course, which we value so much for those who are not yet married to partake, because we have discovered that most of the challenges that we hear from couples, they do emanate from not having enough preparation before they get married.
Absolutely.
And we are here tonight with a great topic, the effects of name calling. And it's one of the things that do happen. If you grew up in an environment that I grew up in, name calling was flying all over.
Yeah, absolutely. Name calling is very destructive. But we find that in marriages, we find that in relationships. And today we've come to say, is it a good thing to name call your spouse? What exactly is it? And what are the effects? Sometimes it's easy to engage in certain behaviors, not knowing the effects or the impact that it has on your relationship.
That's very true, especially if these behaviors are coming from your childhood, where we come from. It's easier that if somebody got certain traits, you are given a name, not because you like it, but it is because of those things that you have done or you have repeatedly done. Then you are given a name. If you don't like it, the more they call you. And such behaviors can also be transported in marriages, that we have these derogatory terms that we use on one another.
And you know what? One of the things that we've realized is that context matters a lot in this. Usually, you would find that when people are arguing, and by the way, in marriage, you will argue a lot because you're in close proximity. So you will argue a lot. And it is when those arguments become very much heated that you may find yourself calling your spouse's names. And this is not a productive way of handling marriage or being in a relationship. And so we thought tonight, let's come and talk about this. Sometimes spouses may even call out their spouse and tell them that I don't like you calling me those kind of names, because these names are demeaning, they are degrading you, and you feel unvalued or unrespected. But yet sometimes the spouse may not just understand how it feels.
Instead, the more they are told not to, that's the more they shout those names. That's the more they shout those names. And we want to start by addressing or by saying name calling is different from nicknames. We grew up in an environment, especially here in the UK, where people ask you, how do you want to be called, or who do you want to be called? And for example, my wife Priscilla, she's from her friends, they call her Pipi. And Pipi is a nickname. It's what makes her feel puffed up. My name is Kudzanai, and on social media, if you look, you're looking for Kudzi, but on my ID, it's Kudzanai Coffee. And these nicknames are names that we give to ourselves, or we are given as a way of honor, or as a way of celebrating ourselves. So name calling is not a nickname. Of course, we have some nicknames that people might have given us, but we do not like those. That's name calling. Then name calling on the same vein is not pet name. A pet name is a name that two lovers do call each other, and those who are close and around to them, they might also call the names, or they may not, because some of the pet names, they do carry sexual connotations. So you have a certain pet name that you call your lover because of certain things that you have done, or you do, or how they look when you look at them. I like Bishop last week. She says, when I look at my wife, she's like a platter full of food and I want to eat her. So with that, she might probably give a pet name that is towards that. However, name calling is different. It's name calling is just bullying somebody.
It is bullying somebody. It is very abusive, because you know that your spouse doesn't like you calling them that name, but yet you may just find yourself doing it over and over again. So name calling is using abusive language towards your spouse, and using those demeaning words or demeaning names towards your spouse. That is name calling. Or being very insultive, like insulting your spouse. That is name calling. So if you like what you mentioned, is different from a nickname, is different from a name that I love and I accept. So if something is hurting your spouse, if you're calling them a name or a word that hurts them, then that is name calling, and it is a no.
It's usually something that is very close to their weaknesses. Like we have heard some people using these words. You are a pathetic loser. And we also try, even with our children, especially when they're playing games. If anything happens, it's easier for them to say, "Oh, you're a pathetic loser." What a pathetic loser you are. And such names, we hear them, especially when they're doing mentorship or interventions. You hear that, "Oh, he calls me an
idiot, you're an annoying idiot." Imagine saying those words, or those words coming from somebody that you love. Tonight we're talking about those effects. How does it impact on your relationship? So it could be, saying that you're an annoying idiot, or you are a fat pig, or, you're a disgraceful loser, wife, or whatever, or husband. And these names, we can call them both ways. It could be a husband calling their wife, or a wife calling their husband, and sometimes parents calling their children that as well. So guys, if you're joining us, do throw in what are your views and comments on name calling. Is it okay to name call in a relationship? How do you feel if somebody name calls you, especially if you're in a romantic relationship?
And like we have said, that it's Minister Prophetess Colette Money. She says it's demeaning. Yes, it's a way of pulling somebody down. And these names, they are usually said to somebody in response to their weaknesses. So if somebody does something that you see them at their weaker point, especially if say they can't speak, they stutter, then somebody will use a certain word and
then start calling your spouse, or "Shut up, you stammerer," or something like that. That's name calling, and it's a no, a big no.
And it's more worse that others do this name calling in front of people, or in front of children, if you have children. So much such that even children themselves, when mom says something to them, they will look at mom and say, "You're right, a dumb donkey," Why? Because that's what dad normally say.
And I've shared with my husband. One time I worked with a girl, and she kept referring to herself, saying that, oh, I'm dumb, oh, I'm stupid, oh, I'm useless, I'm this. And I kept asking the girl, like, where are you getting all these things from? And one thing that I picked up is that where she's coming from, mommy or daddy always tells her that you're dumb, you're stupid, you're good for nothing. And those things can affect or impact on their later adult life. So
it becomes a blueprint.
It does become a blueprint. So some of the effects that we are going to share tonight are things that we've taken a look over the years, and picked up as what it can actually impact when your spouse is name calling you. Good evening, Pastor Lynette. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are so honored to have you on this platform. And we must say that the Bible does state that death and life are in the power of your words. So what you say to your spouse impact on the life or the death of that marriage. You can't expect to say all these demeaning words to your spouse and then expect a romantic or a rosy relationship.
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
It's after bullying somebody and expect them to do something great. It's not very possible.
Yes. So effect number one, the main some of the effects of name calling in relationship is a loss of respect for each other.
Whenever name calling comes in place, it shows that the one who is saying it is no longer respecting the other, and the one who is being name called as well, they will also lose respect to the one who is calling them. So there we are seeing that the relationship is, at its stretching point. Why? Because the name caller does not place value on their spouse, and the one who is being called will then in retrospect lose respect, because you can't respect somebody who is bullying you. You can't. In fact, name calling is emotional abuse.
So verbal abuse.
So you can't keep on respecting somebody who is abusing you. You will then have to try to fight and retreat, because you're like being put under subjection with somebody whom you love.
Absolutely. So it does lead to loss of respect, like both of you literally. Sometimes it starts off with the person that's name calling. Name calling on itself is a sign that you're disrespecting your spouse. Like, if I respect you, we've had conversations that no matter how heated the arguments get, like we mentioned earlier, that context, when you're in argument and then it heats up so bad, you may end up name calling each other. But when you respect your spouse, there are things that we've said to ourselves that we should never let it go that way. And part of the things is just shouting. I come from a family where shouting is like my nature, but we had to speak about it and say, do you know what? It's disrespectful to shout at your spouse. It's very disrespectful. So name calling, it may start off with the other person that's name calling being disrespectful, but the longer you are called names, like, sometimes in Shona, they can even say, urimbwa, and say all those demeaning words about their spouse. Eventually, that spouse will just look at their, their name caller and be like, I don't respect you as well, because you're failing to respect. So then at the end of the day, it's leading to loss of respect for one another. And the biggest thing is that once respect is gone in a marriage, that marriage is doomed.
It's hard to, in a relationship, the relationship is not sustainable. Once you reach that area, the relationship is not sustainable.
The second effect of name calling in relationship is that it gets in the way of healthy communication.
And the moment I feel somebody attacking me, then I stand to defend myself. And when we reach the attack and defense kind of communication, then it becomes the communication itself.
You're not.
It's now in a battlefield. So there's no healthy communication there. What it is you are standing in that corner and I'm standing in this corner, and we are throwing missiles on each other. Or you are throwing missiles and I reach a point whereby I'm just closing my ears. So we are no longer having healthy communication, and with their transparency, their vulnerability cannot be found. I cannot be vulnerable to somebody who, when I pour my heart to them, this is my weakness, or these are the areas that I'm being challenged, then they call a name. So if you do that, the moment you do that, then my communication skill becomes the one of a defender. So I will not be vulnerable. I will not be transparent.
Yes, MC Tandy, we are coming to your question. It says, what if name calling is coming from mother-in-law? That we are going to get to that. But a key one is that it does get in the way of your communication. It's hard to communicate with somebody who's calling you names. That's the absolute.
Yes. And this doesn't matter whether it's your husband, it's you and your children, it's from a work colleague. Anyone who name calls you, you try to put a wall. Why? Because you want to show them that I'm not happy. And you also try to distance yourself and say, okay, because you're saying this, then I want to, let there be. It's a way of protesting, isn't it?
Yes, and we are hoping that as we are discussing name calling, you're thinking through. Sometimes we are not always the victims. Sometimes we find ourselves on the giving end. And you're probably calling names to your spouse, and you may just not realize how demeaning or how degrading it is. And yes, MC Tandy, you've mentioned a point that we've got here, that it may reduce or affect their spouse's self-esteem and confidence. And this usually is for the spouse that is on the receiving end. Imagine your spouse just telling you you're a stupid idiot woman, you're a stupid man, you're foolish. And in some cases, they go on to compare you with other men. So if you're a man, I can just be like, oh, you are a lazy dog. Other men are out there, they are working, they are getting money, and you're just sat and you're not doing anything. So it will eventually, it may just reduce the other person's self-esteem or self-confidence.
We have to know that in communication, your content is your content unveils or reveals your intention. So content reveals intent. So whatever you are intending, we know it by the type of content that you give out. So whenever we hear the name calling, we know that usually it's being said by people who want to dominate. They want to gain power over the other spouse. So I call you this name, you are stupid, you are this, you are that, so that I gain power over you. When I tell you to sit down, you sit down. Why? Because I've told you that you're dumb, you're stupid, you're a loser,
ugly.
you are
so
ugly,
thinking,
you are pathetic.
If I leave you, especially this, we hear this a lot of times, spouses, name calling, body shaming each other, like, oh, you've got this big pot belly, who's gonna love you the way you are? And so a spouse begins to feel that, if I leave him, like, I'm doomed. Where am I gonna go apart from him? And at the end of the day, you become reliant on your spouse, and you feel that, this is the best thing that can ever happen to me. When in actual fact, they are using those name calling, those demeaning words to degrade you, so that you don't feel confident of yourself.
It reminds me of a young couple that we were working with, and we were speaking to the spouse, the wife, and we are saying to her, you know what, with what you do with your background of study, you can do this and that. And she goes on to say, my husband said to me, I'm lazy, I can't do anything. And I wanted to go this further, but from the way he speaks to me, then I feel that I can't do anything. So then that person becomes the God, that you cannot do anything without their approval. You can't do anything without them. They are like a God in you. They are controlling you by using those names, by showing you weaknesses, because they want to point at things that you can't do. And those names, usually they are pointing at things that you can't do, at things that you can't change. You know, it could be your background, it could be your history,
it could be your appearance,
your hair loss that you you try to, and you almost be walking like this here, covering your boss. Anytime you are on a platform where there are people, that comes into you, it reduces your confidence, isn't it? So you have now loss of esteem. So you feel like, okay, apart from that, I can only have confidence if I'm with them, because they are the macho. They are the ones who have it all. You know, everything within them is on point.
Yes, so let's be careful of name calling, as it can affect your spouse's self-esteem and confidence. We've heard of spouses that say, you know what, it's hard for me to undress in the presence of my spouse. I can't undress when they're looking at me. Why? Because they've name called, you know, they've said certain names, or you're too skinny, or you're too fat, or this and that. And because of that, how do I then find the confidence? And it's quite interesting that the other spouse is waiting for you to show up and be confident, when they are the ones that are actually causing you to have that low self-esteem. And Prophet Coletimani says they have become an idol, exalting themselves above God. Absolutely. And they make you reliant and dependent on them in every way.
And that's what they'll be looking for. You know, they're abusers. I mean, we are talking of a bully here who is looking for their own things to be done their own way. So they want to call for the shots. And how did they do that? They name call you. They use those degrading words. Then they become the macho. So they minimize so that they become the higher person.
Yes. Good evening, Pastor Julie. Thank you for joining us. Good evening, Minister Shama, Gara, Natalie. Good to see you on the platform. It's been a minute. Thank you for joining us.
Natalie Ramai, how are you? My little sis, it's good to see you.
It's lovely to see you. Rachel she just threw in a comment that we've got right as part of the effect of name relationship. Number 4 that we have is that it can lead to resentment. And absolutely, we do agree on that. And Tandy also mentioned that one becomes very withdrawn. It is absolutely true. And resentment is a big one.
I want to say this to men, that you know what, name calling to your spouse, especially to your wife, it's both ends. It can be tough for that person that after name calling them, you get into the bedroom and you want to sleep with them. It can be very tough hard, because they are feeling like
we as women, we don't forget so quickly.
The superior one, and I am the lower one. It's both ends. For men, ladies, hear me. The greatest and the strongest intimate body part, your husband, that is going to bring the most intimate organ, is not the one at the bottom. It's the one between the ears, not the one between the legs. So if you affect them, the one between the ears, if it is affected, then the one between the legs will not erect. Will not work. So you'll be surprised that what is it? Is he cheating? Is it? No, you have affected them psychologically. So when they get into the bedroom, they can't perform because sex is in the mind. It's in the mind. So once you affect the mind, you have affected them sexually.
And this we've worked again with some people that sometimes the name calling is calling somebody based on where they come from. You know, if they are from the village, you know, and then your name calling, oh, you village boy, you know, village boy, and
village boy,
and you are saying it in such a way that you want to demean them.
Yes.
And this has happened to an extent that the man was not rising anymore. And then the lady was asking, speak to my husband, he doesn't sleep with me anymore. And we spoke to this guy. This guy said, the way my wife made me feel whenever she started name calling me, using my village people's
like
name.
a subordinate who wants to sleep with their superior. So they are more superior to me, and so I feel abused to sleep with them.
And as we are talking now, that relationship is gone. So this is a big one, and what, like we mentioned earlier, it can lead to resentment. You just may get resentful over your towards your spouse, and once resentment kicks in, that marriage is difficult to thrive unless you then get back to the drawing board and work things out. Yes.
So number one
is a loss of respect for each other. Number two, that is, it can get in the way of your healthy communication. Number three, it may affect your spouse's self-esteem and confidence. Number four, it can lead to resentment. And number five, before we go to number five, CC says, some say it in a joking manner, not knowing the impact it has on the other part. And that one, it is up to the person that's being name called to call it out. If you're not happy, you know, it may be in a joking way. If you're not happy about it, if it's demeaning you, then you have the right to speak out and tell them how it makes you feel, so that they don't carry on doing that. And point number five, which is the last one for tonight, is that it can impact you and your partner if you don't express your frustrations in a respectful way. So it can impact the overall outcome of the relationship.
So this now goes on to answer C and as well as MC Tandy to say, in every relationship we have to create boundaries, and boundaries are quite important. There's a book, Boundaries. I've forgotten, is it by Henry? I've forgotten the author, but it's quite a good book. It teaches you how to communicate boundaries with those around you and those whom you love. So if somebody is saying it in a joking way, you have to find a way of sitting down with them and explaining to them how it makes you feel and you know why you do not like it. And some of these names, they may be, they might also be triggers to certain things that happened in the past. So be willing to sit down with them. And if it is coming from your in-laws, like Tandy says, it's an issue where you need a mediator in most cases to say, you know what, could you please go, and somebody who is a go-between, could you please speak to these people, because when they say this, it doesn't make me feel good, and it's making me feel reduced. It makes me feel loss of it. What it makes you feel. So let them go and communicate. If they do not if they do not change, then it might be that the two of you with the other person, you might need to sit down and communicate, because all these things, one of the biggest things that we have discovered is people do not communicate. We keep on hoping that the other person will know what to do, and the more we wait, the more they graduate in saying that, and it becomes so much late for them to change. So it's better if you hear it, whether it's being said in a joking way or is being said in a in an environment where you cannot answer, look for a way of passing the message to them.
But don't just accept that it's okay, because like we mentioned, it can affect your self-confidence and self-esteem. We all know how we grew up and how those name callings have affected a lot of us into our adult life. Sometimes it could be name callings from school, from secondary school.
It's bullying. I suffered so much because now I have cheeks. At least my face got a bit of flesh, and my nose was way bigger than everything on my face. And there is nothing. With eyes, you can wear glasses. With mouth, you can put those lipstick. And I have
what do you do with your nose?
What do you do with the nose? It kills your confidence. It affects you. It takes the grace of God for you to stand and say, you know what, this is who I am. But to be honest, I was bullied left, right, center, and now now
imagine we get married and then I start.
My wife now starts bullying me up with the nose. when we are married, it's abuse. It's verbal and emotional abuse,
and it
makes the relationship to be very toxic. And
very
don't
toxic.
live with somebody who makes you feel, inhuman, who makes you feel very much, who makes you feel useless.
And those things need to be called out. Do speak to them. Let them know how it makes you feel.
That's a very, very. I was about to say this statement, Audrey, which says, "Sticks and stones may break me, but words cannot break me." This statement is not true. It doesn't have
words. Words are so powerful. Words, especially words said by somebody that you love. It's easy for me to just go on the streets and then people call me all sort of things. It's so easy to forget. But when it comes to negative words or negative name callings from your spouse, it's hard to forget. And this is why we say that it can then later lead to resentment, because you can hold on to so many things that your spouse have said about you. And it is not healthy for a marriage. It is not healthy for any relationship, be it with your children, parental relationship. It is not healthy. So words are powerful. That's why the Bible says death and life are in the power of your tongue.
And psychologically, there's a lot of research that have shown that many people who struggle in their adult life is because of the word that had been said to them during their childhood. And to those who are in personal development, I don't know how true it is, but they say if you keep on speaking to water that you are dirty, you are dirty, you are dirty, then if you microscope that water, there are high chances that you will see the water becoming dirty. Why? Because words, you are speaking life. And if you are a Christian, you have to remember that praying is just words, and God hears those words and answers prayer. So if you are saying those words and they can change a certain atmosphere in your life, what more in your spouse's life? And by the way, it's not mainly what is being said, but who is saying it,
which makes it even worse. Thank you so much. God is on the Move channel for joining us tonight. You say that it's a very important topic. Absolutely. We're just going to give the shout outs. Thank you, TC, Cynthia Masiwa. Thank you for joining us. And we know that there are many of you that are watching on the sidelines, but you may just not be able to type it out. We love you so much and we value your time that you've been on this platform tonight.
Homework. Would you go and sit down with your spouse and ask them, be honest. It's a time of being honest, being vulnerable, and being transparent. Sit down with them and ask them, is there any point in our relationship that I have called you a name that makes you feel degraded, or it makes you feel unloved? Then let them say it. And when they have said it,
don't dismiss what they're saying.
And don't tell them that I said this because. Don't cover up. Apologize. Tell them that you are apologizing for calling them this name, and you will not say it again, because it makes them feel degraded. It makes them feel unloved. It makes them feel unwanted.
So we start tonight, right?
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. I think this is what we had time for tonight. We are back again next week. Thank you all for engaging with us tonight. We are hoping that you will join us again next week, Thursday, same time, same channel.
God bless you. I see a winner in you. Till we meet again. Love you. Bye-bye.